Mark 15. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
Today, a daily look at the key topics impacting rural Illinois. If you live in Illinois, we examine the issues impacting you, your income, and your community. Here's your host for today's program, Bill Shonky.
Hey, good Friday to you, Illinois. Thanks for joining us for this adventure in broadcasting on the 10th of May. And, well, we have quite the roundtable we have assembled here. We have Adam Nielsen, our National Policy Director at Illinois Farm Bureau. We have Mike Doherty, Senior Economist at Illinois Farm Bureau. And normally this time, Don Schaefer's here, and turns out he's here as well at Midwest Truckers. And we're going to do a little roundtable discussion for a while about trade. And this, as we have this discussion, who knows what kind of news might be breaking out of D.C. because of the U.S.-China trade talks. But we're just going to talk about trade in general. We'll talk about tariffs. We'll talk about how so much of the economy is doing well, but in agriculture we're continuing to lag, and you can certainly see that in the corn and soybean prices that we're up against here as well. And we'll talk about China, but we can also discuss things from other perspectives too, because USMCA looms. Hopefully there can be deals with Japan. What about Europe and all these things around the world? So we'll get our first break out of the way, and then we will dive right into trade talks. Hopefully, even as the program goes along, we could be singing a better tune, but we'll just see how this thing goes along. So we'll have a little trade roundtable coming up here in just a couple of minutes on a Friday, RFD today.
Look up, look down, look around, look up, look down, look around, in the trees and on the ground, 'cause the ALB must be found.
If you're hearing this, you should be concerned about the Asian longhorn beetle, an invasive species that's destroying our trees. But you can help. Look for the signs and help stop the beetle.
Look up, look down, look around, look up, look down, look around, in the trees and on the ground, 'cause the ALB must be found.
Some signs of the ALB are dime-sized holes on tree trunks, a sawdust-like material called frass, and the beetle itself, with a long black body and white spots.
Look up, look down, look around, look up, look down, look around, in the trees and on the ground, 'cause the ALB must be found.
Learn all the signs and how to report them at AsianLonghornedBeetle.com. That's AsianLonghornedBeetle.com.
Spring is here and things are buzzing. Farmers and pollinators are working together to help feed us. In fact, 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat exists because of bees, butterflies, birds, bats, and other insects. Pollinators are important to our food system and the ecosystem overall. That's why farmers and those in the agricultural industry are working together to protect pollinators through education, research, and conservation efforts. Visit ILAGformonarchs.org to join the buzz. That's ILAGformonarchs.org.
When it comes to social media, Sabrina Berkowitz connects rural routes for you. Sabrina covers a broad range of ag topics, so Farm Bureau members are the first to know about key issues. Here's a bit about her rural roots.
I grew up with a grain and livestock farm in my extended family, and today I really enjoy helping people learn how to use social media to advocate for agriculture.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
Welcome back to RFD today on a Friday. I'm DeLawes Yonke. Look at this assemblage we have here. Or I guess listen to this assemblage we have here since we're doing this on radio. Adam Nielsen, National Policy Development, Illinois Farm Bureau. Thank you, sir. By the way, I think the Cardinals just scored again. I don't know how they did that, but I think they just scored again.
Yeah.
Don Schaefer here, Midwest Truckers Association. Don, how are you?
Go Cubs.
I really thought we'd have Mike sitting between you guys, but I'm sure we'll get along just fine. And Mike Doherty, Hombre Principal, Senior Economist at Illinois Farm Bureau. How are you, sir?
Good morning, and thank you.
So we put this together in the last couple of days, and now here we are as we're doing this, and we're doing this on a Friday morning. And part of it is just, well, what if something happens as we're doing this discussions? Because this whole thing, yesterday was supposed to be a big day of talks. It's a fluid situation.
There we go.
And then what have you been hearing about things in D.C.?
The tariff increase on $200 billion worth of Chinese imports went into effect. We jumped from 10 to 25% at midnight, or a minute after midnight this morning. So that doesn't affect ships that are on the way, but any ship that is now leaving China today and their cargo, if they fall into those categories, are subject to the additional tariffs.
A play like that, a step like that, if negotiations go awfully well, I assume you could walk that back.
Right.
It seems like a hard thing to walk back. But
yes, they have been walked back, or the threat has been walked back. Remember, there have been deadlines to meet, and then deciding to push the increase off into the future. That happened when we were at our annual meeting in December. And the president said he's flexible, and he will react to whatever progress is made in the negotiations, which continue into today.
I didn't hear much. I assume then there's a response.
Yes, they are ready to respond, and we haven't heard what that will be, but they've been talking about that for the last couple of days, and that was reaffirmed this morning, that there will be a response, and so I guess we're just bracing to see what that will mean.
Okay. Don, thinking about what this means for you, let's just talk about that. What does this mean for you? Midwest truckers, over-the-road trucking, there's so much going from point A to point B, but what does it mean?
Well, it's just one more, it's one more challenge for the ag transporter. From the standpoint of we're dealing with floods, we're dealing with, changes in rail movements. We're talking about what's going to move in and what's going to go out. Right now there's a lot of uncertainty in the entire, I would say, the world transportation marketplace, but especially here in the Midwest, because there's a lot of options that are kind of being talked about right now, but the uncertainty. Everyone hates uncertainty. Number one, everyone wants a definite plan. They want to know what's going where, what's going, what's not going to go. We've got especially what the exports that are going out. Where is the market? Is the market going to dry up? Is it going to be transferred? In other words, it's easy to move, say we're going to move beans. We're going to move beans to China or what have you. What if all of a sudden the president does say, hey, we're going to be humanitarian, we're going to buy those beans and we're going to send them to Africa? Well, all of a sudden we're going, well, how are we going to get them there? Because all of a sudden you're talking about going from maybe down the river. Now you're talking about going by rail. A lot of questions.
This could be one of the wild cards. What if the deal gets done? China wants to start buying right now, and we're like, oh well, okay, but the river doesn't work right now. So I don't even know how that sort of thing. We'd love to get them to you. We'll get them to you as soon as we can.
We promise to get them to you when
we'll
when
well,
it
that's
crests,
a problem.
after it crests.
Yeah, because we're talking a river that anything from St. Louis on north, forget it. You've got we got 6 or 7 Class 1 railroads that go like into St. Louis that are moving goods and moving grain and that kind of stuff. And you're locked free from number 27 I think it is in Granite City all the way down, and we're dealing with not all-time record high floods, but we're almost right there. So there's just so many things. Plus, with all the planned work on the locks and dams this summer. So you're going to have people scattering from now for the next 9 months trying to figure out how we're going to move stuff.
Yeah. Mike Doherty, Senior Economist, when we think about these trade movements and negotiations? What are some of the things that you have been watching closely, or what comes to mind?
I think the biggest concern here is that the U.S. economy has been expanding better than we expected. It performed better in the first quarter than what the leading indicators were pointing to in the final quarter of last year. So we came out of this first quarter with a pretty good GDP growth rate. We also had an increase in real wages and salaries that was kind of surprising. It was around 3.5%, ahead of above inflation. And that trajectory was looking quite positive. But almost every economist out there has said that trajectory is looking positive if we do not escalate the trade war. And so the projections were that we could count on our economic growth rate continuing through 2019 and probably on into 2020, which is, breaking all the records. However, these very long periods of economic growth they don't end out of nowhere. They end because something happened. Something derailed them. Sometimes it's a war that breaks out, or some other policy takes place that derails the expansion. That's what we're looking at right now. Something like this, it's possible. When you look at the percentage of Chinese imported goods that this tariff is going to be increased on, and what the value of those goods are, and how much that's going to increase the price to the U.S. consumers, which basically means you go to the store, you buy what you bought yesterday, but it costs you more, but you don't get any greater value or greater utility out of it. That's just gone. And that could derail our expansion.
Okay. Interesting stuff. Music's already up, which means we have a break coming up, and we will discuss this quite a bit more. And when we talk about trade, we have other things to talk about beyond China, but other nations and other deals to discuss other than China. Stay tuned. Roundtable trade discussion will continue on a Friday, RFD today.
When it comes to our members, Chris Magnuson connects rural routes for you. Chris leads Illinois Farm Bureau's efforts to provide valuable information to our members. He has spent 2 decades with IFB. Here's a bit about his rural roots.
I grew up on a farm with corn, soybeans, and Christmas trees. I've been in ag communication for 3 decades now. My greatest satisfaction has always remained the same, to serve our members.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
What's the excitement about buying a brand new car when you pay full price for it? County Farm Bureau members have a reason to be excited. A Farm Bureau membership gives you 2 car purchase discounts. When members buy a new Ford vehicle, they receive $500 off their purchase. And with a purchase of a qualifying Lincoln vehicle, they receive $750 off. Everyone loves a good deal, and the money saved is worth the price of our annual membership. This is just one of our 300,000 plus discounts that are always changing to fit our members' needs. Not a Farm Bureau member? Visit Illinois Farm Bureau online and join today.
You're going to need me.
You're going to need us.
All of us.
You're going to need our technical skills,
our math, our engineering skills.
You're going to need our help with your water, your air, your food.
You're going to need our organizational skills, our problem-solving skills.
You're going to need our determination, our honesty, our compassion.
You're going to need the next generation of leaders to face the challenges the future will bring.
And we promise, we'll be there when you need us.
Today, 4-H is growing the next generation of leaders. Support us at 4h.org.
It's a bully, but we aren't afraid of a fight. It's elusive, but our focus never fades. It's deadly, but we were born to defeat cancer. You may not have heard of us, but our work has helped millions impacted by cancer. We are the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. We are leaders in advancing breakthroughs in immunotherapy, genomics, and personalized medicine. This research saves lives. After 65 years of fighting blood cancers, we've arrived at a game-changing belief. The cures for cancer are in our blood. The drugs and treatments we've developed for blood cancers have helped people affected by many different types of cancers. We are the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Beating cancer is in our blood. Learn more at lls.org.
All right, welcome back. This is RFD Today. Adam Nielsen, Illinois Farm Bureau. Mike Doherty, Illinois Farm Bureau. Don Schaefer, Midwest Truckers. Adam, going back to what Mike was talking about with, great jobs reports, and the Dow was going to tank, and it didn't tank. It's still strong, and 3.6% unemployment, which I didn't even know was possible that it could get that low. So when you talk, folks in D.C., because the economy is in one spot, and the farm economy is in another spot.
5-6 years of diminishing returns. Net farm income still down. The trade wars have exacerbated that. We lost half of our China soybean market last year. That's $1 billion. That's not chump change. There's another story to be told about U.S. agriculture and Illinois agriculture. At the same time, we're talking about broad economic strength. And, we are sacrificing in this trade war. We're making the sacrifices. So last year was the market facilitation program. We were told at the end of the year by the Secretary multiple times that there would not be a second round of the market facilitation program, but we just heard yesterday Vice President Pence up in Minnesota say there will be some sort of assistance, and I think our members would welcome another year of the market facilitation program because our economic situation has not changed one iota.
If we're not going to have markets, we still prefer the markets, but if we're not going to have markets, then what else? So that also leads to, there were a series of tweets by the president today, but part of it included buying from our farmers. So maybe a different form this go around.
Taking some of the tariff revenue, which I'm not, again, sure where that pot of money is. I think it's in my pocketbook. But and using it to purchase soybeans and other commodities from U.S. farmers and then ship them to places where they're needed. That came out of the president's Twitter feed today. $15 billion, I think, was the number that was used. So that would be similar, about twice as much actually as what was paid out in market facilitation program payments over the last year. It was about $7.9 billion.
That's right, because there were three tenants to the MFP, and
there were market development funds, and commodity purchases, fruit and vegetable purchases, and market development in addition to the payments that were made. So this would be double that. And I'm not certain what Vice President Pence talked about yesterday in Minnesota. Maybe he didn't get very detailed. But it is interesting that the administration is thinking ahead, and we applaud them for that.
And I assume that is under the notion that if these trade talks continue.
Yes, and I think that is an acknowledgement that this is not going to be resolved overnight. And it's also an acknowledgement of the political reality that there are people who are starting to lose patience in our industry.
Yeah. If they haven't already. Yeah.
Yes.
Don, either way, that means, hey, if we're going to buy it and ship it to humanitarian aid, or if we're going to make deals and send it to China, either way, hopefully that means we're moving product one way or another.
If we can. That's the issue right now, and it's going to continue to be an issue. What's the most economical way to move it? We're looking at a lot of uncertainties out there. First of all, we're looking, and just to tie all this together, we see in the state level, we see a lot of talk about infrastructure improvement. You go to D.C., we're doing the same thing. We're talking about long term, they're talking $12 trillion, for capital infrastructure improvement over the next 20 years.
12.
12.
Not 1.5 to 2.
Well, not just. No, we're talking. This is think tanks that are coming out and making dramatic discussions. Is the best way to put it. The needs that are out there, we're first of all, is it good for the economy? Well, sure, you're going to put a lot of construction people to work.
Depends on how much steel you have to buy over 20 years and what the cost that steel is going to be.
But also how high, but how high are the motor fuel taxes going to go? How are, all of this, tie all this together. It's just, and I shouldn't just talk about highways. We shouldn't at all. We should be talking about the waterways more than anything else. And we're going to deal with that, because, right now we're kind of tied up because of the flooding. But looking ahead for the next couple of years, we're looking at major work on the Illinois River. We're still looking to continue work on Ohio, Mississippi. We need this to move commodities. The bottom line, and it's interesting to watch the investments that are being made. There's we've got a lot of foreign countries that are investing in new river terminals down in the St. Louis area. People, it's like, there's 15 river terminals where you can haul grain out of down in what we call that, that ag coast of America. And new investment being made there in anticipation of being able to move more grains. What does this do to it? Does this push things then onto unit trains down to the Gulf Coast? Does this say, are we going to head straight west? How are we going to do this? There's so much uncertainty out there, and a lot of billions upon billions of dollars of investments to be made, and a lot of this rate kind of sits there, and we have to watch where all this political machination is going to go.
Mike, I didn't mean to leave you out of this, but we're up against the break. We'll come back. We'll start with you when we continue our trade discussion here on a Friday, RFD Today.
More farm news and information ahead. Stay tuned for more RFD Today here on the Illinois Farm Bureau Radio Network.
Attention corn farmers. Your corn checkoff dollars are working with the U.S. Meat Export Federation to grow red meat export volumes. Because when we're exporting beef, we're also exporting corn. The beef industry consumes 28% of all corn fed to livestock, plus additional corn in the form of DDGs, a co-product of ethanol production. Now that's what we call working an angle. Your checkoff is working corn from all angles. Because of the Illinois Corn Marketing Board, your profitability is our bottom line. A message from the Illinois Corn Checkoff.
As you prepare for planting season, remember your neighbors. Whether you're an applicator, grower, or beekeeper, use FieldWatch to register your farm and monitor for sensitive sites around you. FieldWatch is a free, easy-to-use online mapping tool. Consulting FieldWatch is now a requirement for the over-the-top use dicamba products. Communicating with your neighbors will help you protect your farm and the environment. Don't wait. Go online to fieldwatch.com. Growing agriculture. We grow best together.
Does the warmer weather have you itching for a weekend getaway? Take your Illinois Farm Bureau membership savings with you.
Farm Bureau members can save up to 20% at choice hotels, including favorites like Comfort Suites, Sleep Inn, Quality Inn and Suites, with even more to choose from.
Call 800-258-2847 or visit the Choice Hotels website to search all the hotels at once and to make advance reservations.
Contact your local county farm bureau for your discount code number.
All Ag.
All Illinois.
All Now.
There are a lot of smartphone apps out there, but do they have what's important to us here in Illinois? The Farm Week Now app does, and it's always at your fingertips. All Ag, all Illinois, and 24/7 where and when you need it for free. Go to your app or Play Store on your smartphone, hit search, type in Farm Week Now, that's one word, and download it today. Brought to you by Illinois Farm Bureau, where we're all about farm, family, and food.
Farm Week and FarmWeekNow.com journalist Kay Shipman connects rural routes for you. For 3 decades, Kay has delivered important news. She covers everything from legislative issues to the latest in soil and water conservation. Here's a bit about her rural roots.
I love covering so many aspects of agriculture and providing readers with the facts they need to make better decisions. I also get to work with farmers and meet new people along the way.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com and Farm Week keep you connected.
From midnight snacks to holiday gatherings, food is a part of our culture that brings us together every day. To make sure we all have food on our tables, Illinois farmers are going beyond planting crops and raising animals. We're making sure the wildlife that helps our food grow has homes too. To learn more about conservation efforts, visit ilfarmersconserve.com. Preserving our water, protecting our land, providing our food.
This message brought to you by Illinois Farm Bureau.
Welcome back to RFD. Today on a Friday, I'm DeLoss Yonke in the middle of a trade roundtable here. Adam Nielsen, Mike Doherty, Illinois Farm Bureau, Don Schaefer's Executive Vice President of Midwest Truckers. Mike Doherty, Senior Economist, Illinois Farm Bureau. Meanwhile, Secretary Sonny Perdue, USDA Secretary, just tweeted, "Hey, I'm in Japan." we're rolling here while we're in Japan with our fourth largest ag customer. So that's phenomenal timing. And also in his tweet, while China may backtrack, the president is steadfast in his support for U.S. farmers and directed USDA to work on a plan quickly. So there's another part of the trade discussions. And hey, wow, if we could get a deal with Japan.
Oh, Japan. So yeah,
May is beef month. I mean, let's talk about some help
which was the country we had on the table, right, for the TPP, the largest trade agreement ever, and we backed out of that, right? So. Japan, the second largest customer for over time for Illinois corn, right after Mexico. We talk a lot about Mexico. Mexico is corn and pork top customer, but right after that is Japan. A lot of people don't even think about that. You're talking about the third largest economy in the world. Most people don't think about that. They think it's the U.S., China, and then you ask somebody, they'll say India. Well, no, actually, Japan is right up there after China. And the fourth largest trading partner for the U.S., in which is estimated is that over 1 million U.S. jobs depend, maybe 1.3 million U.S. jobs depend on our trade with Japan. So, a very important country to do right by.
And some of the original discussions was, you know what, we already had a plan in place with TPP. What if we just went with the framework of that plan and, which sounds easy.
Right. That's why he's there, because Canada is benefiting from their participation in TPP, and they're a lot more competitive than that market for beef than we are.
Yeah.
So
because we still have the 38% tariff in place.
Yes.
Yes, and in fact, we've had the numbers coming, the preliminary numbers for 2019 show that we are losing market share in beef and pork exports compared to 2018 to Japan.
Well, it's similar to Australia, where you're like, well, God bless the Australian farmers and all, but if you have a chance to have good old U.S. corn-fed beef, let's do it. But if the price tag is too high, then
right, there's substitutes.
There are substitutes, just like what we do. Every time we go shopping for something, if there's a substitute there, then it's certainly worth consideration.
It is.
Well, that's an interesting one. And then there's also USMCA, which is in there as well, which takes us back to the tariff talk again. And, as long as those tariffs are there, would ratification even take place? Right.
USMCA is now an all-hands-on-deck exercise for the administration, and we've been talking to them on a regular basis. We're trying to round up congressional support for USMCA. There are a lot of issues at play, not just agriculture, but pharmaceuticals and the tariffs that remain on Canadian and Mexico for steel and aluminum. And those are two big issues that have to be resolved before we can get USMCA ratified.
Mike, go ahead.
Well, we got it in, yes. And, another thing people don't think about is that, if the tariff barriers form sort of a wall between countries. And so you're sitting here in your U.S. company, and maybe your U.S. company that owns large pork operations, and you've got this wall going up between you and this growing market in Mexico, which also has free trade. Mexico has free trade agreements with other countries, including Japan, and they're an exporter as well. Then you get enticed into what you have an incentive there to what they call hop the fence. If you can't stay here in the U.S. and do business internationally because you've got these big tariff barriers between you and all your customers, well, you just go to that country and put your investment dollars there. So you have operations here in the U.S., but you also own operations in Mexico. So that's the other thing to be considered in this is how much U.S. business. This is a mobile world. I mean, the Internet has made it very easy for companies to have operations in various countries and to keep track of what's going on and move management back and forth and all that.
Sometimes you hate to hear things like it's a global economy, but the fact is it is a global economy.
Exactly. So these little tariff barriers that form these walls, they can be you can leapfrog over them basically.
Yeah, it's a global economy, but I still have this 40-acre field of corn that I need to.
That's the one that can't move. The one that cannot move is the corn and soybean farmer. They are tethered.
1 minute here, Don. I want to throw this out because we were talking about strong economy and low unemployment and jobs and eco-devo and all that sort of thing. So does that mean more trucks over the road, more trucks committed to other things that could, eventually more choices, substitutes as opposed to agriculture?
It means more multimodal. I mean, it means not just trucks. It means more movements by ship, more movement, air, train. I mean, the whole caboodle. I mean, they say by the time a car's made and in the finish line, it rolls off the line in Mexico, the parts in those vehicles have gone back and forth between the United States and Mexico maybe 3 times. In other words, the components made in Mexico, shipped to the United States, put together in a module. The module is then shipped back to Mexico. It's put in the car in Mexico, and then the car is then shipped back to the United States. And so when you go to the borders, and you see the trucks lined up, that's what it is. It's components, and it's gone back and forth. And so we don't use Mexico as as the perfect example, but I mean it just goes to show that it's not as simple as the public thinks. The consumer doesn't understand. A lot of them don't understand how worldly so much of this is.
Yeah. All right, more to come on a Friday. RFD today.
Farm Week and FarmWeekNow.com journalist Daniel Grant connects rural routes for you. With more than 2 decades of reporting under his belt, Dan is the go-to source for farmers when it comes to commodities. Here's a bit about his rural roots.
I grew up on a grain and livestock farm near Roseville in Warren County. What I love about my job is working with people, traveling across Illinois, and visiting farms along the way.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
Farm, family, food. Those 3 words best describe Illinois Farm Bureau. Farm. For 100 years, Farm Bureau in Illinois has represented and served the men and women who make Illinois one of the top food-producing states. Family. At the heart of rural Illinois are traditional farm families who work together through Illinois Farm Bureau. And food. Farm Bureau families are proud to grow the healthy food they provide their families and yours. Farm, family, food. The heart of Farm Bureau in Illinois.
Let's check the markets on the RFD Radio Network. I'm DeLoss Yankee. Well, we're not moving much today, which could be attributed to USDA reports to be released in a little bit. We've gone on both sides of unchanged, but the margins, the ranges are pretty narrow. July corn down a fraction, 353. December down a half, 372 1/4. July soybeans unchanged, 812 3/4. November down a half, 835 1/4. July wheat up 1 1/4, 430 3/4. But been pretty quiet so far today. A couple of big USDA reports will be released at 11 o'clock. June hogs down 135, 88.65. June cattle down 42, 111.52. Feeder cattle contracts for August down 85, 143.62. June crude up 4 cents, 61.75. DeLoss Yankee, RFD Radio Network. All right. Welcome back to RFD today on a Friday. I'm DeLoss Yankee, Adam Nielsen, Mike Doherty, Illinois Farm Bureau. Don Schaefer is Executive Vice President at Midwest Truckers Association. We've been talking about trade from a lot of different standpoints. Certainly talk about China, and which certainly gets headlines because of what they buy, the amount of what they buy, and also the ongoing trade talks in D.C. And we're watching these market reports. We're hoping that a giant spike, hopefully it's a spike in the upwards direction, would take place, and that could give us a signal something's going on. But so far, at least as we're doing this, not yet. So, Adam, yes, go ahead, sir.
Just going to say, there's a lot of nervous people out there. I mean, and I'm talking, let's say you run an intermodal facility, of which there are several here in Illinois, many, many more in the Midwest, which are heavily dependent upon goods that are moved from China and moved to China, one of the biggest customers. Do you continue your expansion? Do you sit there and worry about managing what comes in, what goes out? And from that standpoint, you're watching very carefully, because if it goes from Long Beach, it ends up in maybe Elwood, Illinois, then it ends up at a factory or a warehouse somewhere in the Chicago suburbs. You're going to watch it, because is there going to be an effect on the input? I mean, the volume that's going to be coming through there.
And I'm thinking from your perspective, I'm sure you're hearing from members.
Yeah.
And have been all the time, just, your thoughts about as we continue through this whole process.
I think they're bracing themselves for this negotiation with China to be very prolonged. I think there's a feeling that there is not going to be a quick solution to it. I think what we're seeing right now happening is indication of that. The fact that they're now talking about perhaps a second round of market facilitation program payments, or some sort of emergency purchase of U.S. commodities. Again, another indicator. We were told in September, when we had a group in Washington, that we weren't going to get everything that we wanted in the deal with China. And now it's starting to appear like we're not going to get a deal, at least for the time being. So hopefully, it's always better when they're at the table together, and we hope that the talks continue at a very high level, and that things will turn around. But all indications are that we're in for a long slog.
That was part of the discussion. I still remember when Greg Dowd was at our Farm Broadcasting Convention in November, and you talk about subsidization, some of the WTO complaints that would have been warranted, not to mention trade secrets. So how do you get a resolution on that sort of thing? Because you want everything to stop, and how are you going to get that to stop? So how do you come up with a resolution in a way that...
You have to have an enforcement mechanism, and I think that's where a lot of this is hung up on. How are we going to enforce the agreement? So that, I think, is a major piece of this that a lot of people don't think about, and that is really what is hanging things up right now, is how will this be enforced? And this is really just a trade deal between the U.S. and China. The WTO is not involved here. There's no third party to go to hear your concern. It's really an agreement between the two nations, and it's an administration agreement, so it will last for however long the Trump administration lasts. So it could be an agreement that will last through January of 2021 or through January of 2025.
I always wondered about that, because surely the Premier's thinking, I'm going to be here longer than you're going to be here.
Yeah, this is not an agreement that's going to end up going to Congress and being ratified like a trade agreement. This is an administrative action.
Wow.
USMCA is a trade agreement. There's a thought that if we can do a deal with Japan, it will start off as an administration agreement, and then as more other areas of the economy are added outside of agriculture, then it's something that could eventually go to Congress. But it will start off as an administrative agreement, just like this would be with China.
Wow. Mike Doherty, Illinois Farm Bureau, what are you thinking through all these discussions here?
Well, I think, a couple things. One is this adds weight to how much are we going to have in storage? What's our carryover going to be going into the next marketing year for corn and soybeans? It looks like this is going to make it very difficult for us to sell off enough stored corn and soybeans to hit what the USDA originally predicted back in February would be our carryover. And if that carryover goes up, which it looks like it's going to have to, as China will most likely be responding to these new round of tariffs, then that's going to just sink soybean prices even lower. So if that happens and soybean prices go even lower, you back up the whole supply chain right up here to Illinois, and we've already had report. There was a report out yesterday by the Chicago Federal Reserve Bank on credit conditions, in their ag letter that they put out quarterly by their economist, and it showed that the farm financial conditions in Illinois and in the Midwest are deteriorating, that it's getting worse. Repayment delinquencies on loans those delinquencies are going up. Repayments are going down. So we're in a pivotal year here with it'll be one of the lowest, biggest drops in farm income we've almost have ever seen in Illinois. And we're right going into the middle of this. And this just, I'm just thinking how this just adds another big, concrete block on top of a deteriorating situation.
Is this almost a reversal, like you talk about how tariffs are a deadweight loss, because you spend more for something that doesn't change its utility. But so as the price of these commodities continues to weaken, they still have the same utility, but their price continues to go down. Is it almost a reversal of that?
Well, you've got that, and you've got it's the way it results in all kinds of market inefficiencies. Right now, Argentinians are reducing how much beef they're consuming because they're selling their beef to China, and they're still selling soybeans to China and shipping soybeans from the United States to Argentina. That is the kind of deadweight losses in there too, which is, running beans around the world because you've alienated the number one customer who ought to be buying them through the most efficient seller, which would be the United States normally at certain times of the year, and now they're not buying. And are we going to get back into that again? I guess that's my other question. Are we going to see a China behavioral change as we saw last year, or a quiet policy that goes beyond the tariffs, where they simply refuse to buy our product again? Are we back into that? If we are, this time around, we've got Brazil offloading a pretty good soybean crop down there, and Argentina, and corn crop has been fantastic down there.
I heard both Argentina and Brazil putting out a lot more than they did last year.
Their corn production is way up.
Yeah. Don, I'd like to keep you for one more segment, just talk about floods and transportation and all that sort of thing. But I certainly have, and I wish I had soap opera music to go behind this, like the closing theme to Days of Our Lives as this continues. Adam Nielsen, Mike Doherty, and we'll continue with John Schaefer just a second here on a Friday, RFD Today. Let's check livestock markets on the RFD Radio Network. I'm DeLoss Yankee. Steers and heifers in Greenville, $2 to $3 lower on low choice, and selects $3 to $4 lower. Choice steers and heifers with the top of 123, high yieldings to 126, prime heifers to 130, a couple of prime steers up to 131. Feeder steers unevenly steady on many of the weights. 6-weight steers 115 to 140. 7 weights 100 to 120. 5-weight heifers 135 to 145. 6-weight heifers with a top of 130. Illinois direct hog market has held steady most of the week, $51 to $57 a hundredweight. Sow market was $2 lower, lightweights topping at $59, heavyweights topping at $65. That's a drop of $10 a hundredweight over the course of just the past week. DeLoss Yankee, RFD Radio Network.
How do people benefit from raising livestock here in Illinois? Rich Giebert, Illinois farmer, president of the Illinois Farm Bureau.
Well, growing up on a livestock farm was always interesting, and I enjoy it more today than I did back then. But it did give me the opportunity to have a good work ethic, learn to get up in the morning, And you know, that was difficult during my senior days at high school and college days. I had a tendency not to go to bed at a respectable hour. But no, it was always enjoyable on the farm and getting up before daybreak and milking the cows and getting the chores done and then go about the rest of the day's business.
Illinois Farm Bureau, along with beef, corn, milk, pork, and soybean associations, make up the Livestock Development Group, supporting the Illinois livestock sector. For more information, check out illinoislivestock.org.
All right, welcome back. RFD today on a Friday. I'm DeLoss Yankee. We regularly have Don Schaefer in on Friday, Executive Vice President of Midwest Truckers.
Here I am.
You know, last year in the summertime, we talked, it was either in July or August, because we were remembering 25 years since the flood of 93 and the role that trucks played in moving stuff that had to be moved. And here we are again. I mean, moving grain, moving livestock, that sort of thing takes a long time, and I assume there's a role of truckers involved in that.
The Governor Pritzker has declared an emergency, I think, in 34 counties now along the Mississippi and Illinois rivers, and that allows truck operators to bypass a lot of the licensing requirements and those types of things if they're involved in emergency movements, those types of things in relation to the flood. This goes, it's a laundry list. Any county along the river seems to be included in it. And a lot of truck operators know that if they don't have the necessary permits or the fuel permits, those types of things, this declaration waives that requirement, and basically the declaration goes until June 3rd, I think it is. So June 2nd, and it started it started on the 3rd, and it goes to June 2nd. So for a lot of truck operators, that helps them out a lot. And actually what it does, it helps out a lot of people who don't have those types of credentials. They can assist in moving rock, sand, those types of things. So again, from that part from the state, the emergency declaration. On top of that, we're watching real closely, and IDOT, Illinois DOT, has been monitoring most of what's going on in terms of closures, bridge closures, road closures, and a lot of the districts, the DOT districts in Illinois, they've got a laundry list of roads that are closed. They've got bridges that are closed, and we even got the Brussels ferry is closed. We got one ferry, excuse me, we have one ferry closed. So, again, it is really tough if you're operating along the rivers to get around. And it looks like it's starting to go down, but it's still going to be quite a while before this list of closures is gone.
IDOT District 6 tweeted an hour ago that Memorial Bridge over the Mississippi River at Quincy has opened to eastbound traffic.
Yep.
So a little bit of progress.
A little bit. I mean, that helps, at the same time, you're sitting there, the Champ Clark Bridge is still closed at Pike over to Louisiana, Missouri. We've got Illinois 351, which is the old 51, is closed at LaSalle. And still watching Illinois 18 over the Illinois River at Henry, which is that's a busy area because that's a busy barge terminal too.
Right. But if trucks are being used elsewhere, I mean, it seems like this would be, I don't know when is a good time, but it seems like a difficult time, especially if we have so much over-the-road business being done. We've been talking about if the economy is strong and if truckers are being pulled in multiple directions.
Yeah, they are.
You can't find truckers to drive them anyway,
Well, it's just with this weather, it's kind of scary because you've got a lot of folks that are that have trucks that are usually busiest time of the year getting ready for planting season. And they're kind of twiddling their thumbs right now because those trucks aren't moving a lot, and because at the same time road work has started, but a lot of the road work's been hampered also. So I mean, it's kind of every day is a little bit different. So we're watching it very carefully and a lot of the truck operators are watching things carefully to see where they can be put their equipment to the best use.
Well, a couple of minutes here. What else is on top of mind for you?
Well, I mean, the Farm Bureau, trucking, us, Midwest truckers, have been, watching very carefully in Springfield what's happening with infrastructure funding. Where are we going in terms of both state and federal? And as we mentioned briefly the other segment, a lot of activity going on in Springfield. We've got several proposals that are out there in regards to transportation funding. All of them include a motor fuel tax increase. But there's a lot of devil in the details here about what else is included in terms of trying to raise more money for roads and bridges. And a couple of ideas have been shot out. One got shot out yesterday, which had like a 25-cent motor fuel tax increase on it, but it also had registration fee increases on it. But it didn't deal with a lot of what we call the truth in taxation parts of taxes on motor fuel. What we have said is that if you're going to raise a motor fuel tax, be truthful about it, because we still have the sales tax on motor fuel. And that money doesn't go into roads and bridges. It goes into the general fund. That's a 6.25% tax. And, the feeling is that even though we passed the lockbox constitutional amendment a couple of years ago, that money still doesn't go into it. And what we're saying is, if you're going to raise the taxes, then make sure that all the taxes you collect on motor fuel goes into the road funds. There's a lot of support for that idea in Springfield. There is a proposal that was been put out by the state chamber, which we have endorsed, that includes that. And it also it does have a motor fuel tax increase in it, but it deals with the important parts of the truth in taxation that we need.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you hosted the Cardinals last weekend. You got the Brewers this weekend. How about that?
It's going to be exciting.
It sure is. Don Schaefer, Midwest Truckers. Also thanks to Mike Doherty and Adam Nielsen for their contributions today. I'm DeLoss Yawkey saying